Hello and good Friday morning. Welcome to Journey Through the Eyes EMDR podcast. And friends, EMDR is incredible. But what's more incredible as we get started in our podcast today, we got to give a good birthday shout out to my beautiful co-host and bestie, Miss Kathy Couch.
Yay!
Kathy, happy birthday.
Yay! 44 with two 4-year-olds.
Yes, the power of four, y'all. So please show Kathy some love this morning. We're so honored, so just proud. You are such a beautiful and incredible soul. And I'm so honored and privileged to be moving through space and time with you, Kathy. So happy birthday. We just had to plug that in, okay?
Yes,
Um,
thank
you're so welcome. And so, friends, you are tuning in. You know that we've shared EMDR. The mission here with Journey Through the Eyes podcast is to both share those important, powerful, intentional, critical conversations for both new and seasoned clinicians about EMDR therapy, how to build your amazing private practice, and y'all. We are here for it. So I'm one of your hosts. I'm Tamara J. Brown, licensed professional counselor and EMDR consultant in training. So grateful, so honored to be here. And I want to introduce my amazing birthday girl co-host, Miss Kathy on the couch. Kathy, tell the folks about yourself.
Yep, I'm Kathy Couch. I'm out here in Twin Falls, Idaho. I own Rewired 360, which is a provider side that teaches and trains EMDR. And then I also own Willow Creek Counseling that does intensives and EMDR intensives and couples intensives on the Gottman method. And we're just building up to our basic trainings for EMDR. And I'm a consultant. And then my specialize in grief, death, dying, and bereavement. And so that's kind of my specialty there.
Awesome. So, y'all, we have an amazing guest. I have been so excited about this conversation. We have Miss Rachel. Rachel, can you tell me how to pronounce your last name so I do not butcher it?
Okay, Elides Badre.
Oh, Miss Rachel. I'm gonna say Miss Rachel, so I don't chop it up. Okay. But folks, Rachel is incredible, and she is a marriage and family therapist who specializes in trauma-informed care. She uses, y'all, which I think is incredible, play therapy, body attunement, and the expressive arts in her therapy work. What I find is so incredible and beautiful is also she's very passionate and working with queer and neurodiverse clients. And it's just powerful about providing affirming and unconditional support. And so I'm so grateful, so honored, Rachel, that you have joined us and willing to share time with us on today. Tell the folks a little bit of who you are, where you are, and share a little bit more about you.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, ladies. I'm coming to you from San Diego, California. Nice and sunny here today for sure. I received my master's from National University in San Diego, and the majority of my training has been in trauma, child development, and play therapy. Before I was licensed, that was actually solely what I did. And I've had a private practice since 2021, and it's called All People Counseling because I am really motivated to make sure inclusivity is really prized out there, and I want people to embrace the full spectrum of their identity inside and out.
I love that. I think that that is so beautiful. And um, you said something that really, I think, just resonates for me. And I think it's just in alignment with the time that we're in. It's just that inclusivity, right? And so holding space, everybody is welcome, right? I'd like to say, Rachel, mental health is not a luxury, it's a
Yeah,
necessity, and it's for everybody, right?
yes.
And so, Kathy, I want to toss this hot mic over to
Yeah.
you, and let's get this conversation started about EMDR and somatic work.
Yeah, I wanted to just comment there about EMDR mental health. If you have a brain, mental health is for you, right? Even, I've been
Mhm.
kind of focusing on animals. I got a new cat. And so it's like, really like, what kind of environment do you want their brain to experience? Playfulness, comfort, and, what are you going to do for your brain to be able to heal. Tamir and I have been on this idea of healing the healer and making sure that we're healed, and we're doing our work when we provide this therapy. And so one of the things I think that stands out about EMDR, and I'm curious kind of how you experienced this, Rachel. I'm not sure if you were in a somatic realm prior to EMDR, but one of the things that we are working on is understanding that the connection with EMDR is a bit different than the narrative therapy because of this somatic part. I've been on this week, I've been saying the issues are in the tissues. I came up with that, y'all. That's mine.
I like that.
It. But I'm curious if you could just give us your background on mind-body connection, and kind of just start us off with your experience there with the somatic work and talking about that.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. So somatic has always been integrated in play therapy. So at the onset of my training and my practicum and associateship, definitely including progressive muscle relaxations, really connecting with the body. And at that point, after going to school, I was already aware of how much trauma resides in our body. I think that the majority of the work that I've done with somatic has actually been in my own personal journey. So I have a high ACEs score, and I didn't really feel my body very well for pretty much all my 20s. And going to school and going to therapy, and my own personal therapist really specializes in somatic work, helping with chronic illness. And that is where I've just, I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm like, oh my goodness, this makes a difference. I used to struggle with migraines consistently, miss time from work. And I don't have, I'll get a headache sometimes, but I don't struggle with migraines. I just feel better as a human after doing this work and being able to release, all those traumatic events that were in my childhood. So
yeah, I wanted to say something, comment on that real quick. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but so what I've learned is so mind-blowing this week. What I've been on is the Adverse Childhood Experiences study that connects the trauma with the physical body and leads to health outcomes in these predictors. What I learned was Francine Shapiro talked about in an article in 2014 that for adults, she identified this as the adverse life experiences. So I've been integrating that in my practice for adults, that she was on to something way in advance of what we've been working on. And I may have gotten the year on that wrong, but I think it's so important that she, had this vision of what these experiences were in the body. We do talk a lot about the Adverse Childhood Experiences scale. We hear that a lot. It's called the ACEs for our listeners, if you're not familiar with that. And it connects the trauma with various somatic issues that present in our bodies. Francine Shapiro identified these as adverse life experiences. So when I'm working with consultees, I tell them, listen, these ALEs are on your target list in phase 1. Take these ALEs, put them in there, because EMDR really does work these ALEs through your system in such a magnificent way. Can you talk a little bit about the nervous system interaction with the body, and a little bit about how those how trauma can be stored in the tissues? Can you talk a little bit about that and the neurobiology of the nervous system there?
I could talk on this all day.
Oh, yay, we got the right one.
So first, I think it's kind of helpful to actually learn about how they developed the ACEs screening tool, or the ALEs. So in the mid 90s, it was actually Kaiser Permanente San Diego and the CDC. They did this study because pioneered this new gastric bypass surgery that was supposed to solve, heart disease, diabetes, all these top killers. Okay? And there was a portion of patients who, no matter what, were not able to keep the weight off, even though the physical changes should not make that possible. Okay? And they've been, touting like calories in versus calories out is the solution to the obesity epidemic and weight loss for a very long time. Okay? So what they did is they surveyed all these people. It was actually over 17,000 people, and tried to find out what the people who couldn't keep the weight off had in common. And those commonalities are now what we know as the ACEs screening tool. Right. So the ACEs screening tool is basically any traumatic events before the age of 18. And yes, it can definitely include lifetime traumatic events. The importance of before 18 is the body and the brain are still developing.
Yeah.
So it actually creates physical changes. And this landmark study found that there's 10 different categories that if people experience these kind of traumas, will actually have that physical impact in their lifetime. So those categories are physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect. There could be a parent struggling with mental health challenges, particularly like suicidality, parents with substance misuse, any family member incarcerated, intimate partner violence, as well as separation/divorce. And, the divorce is common, right? So the majority of the population actually has a ACEs score of 1. So what they noticed that like when you have 4 or more of these ACEs scores, it really has had dramatic effects on the physical well-being of an adult. Right? And the higher the doses of trauma, so the higher the ACEs score, the higher percentage chance of mental health or physical health problems as adults. That could be anxiety, depression, substance use, as well as things that we wouldn't think would be associated with trauma, but that's like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, autoimmune disorder, and cancer. And so I have a direct quote from Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She's the Surgeon General of California. She's no longer. And so this quote is, childhood trauma increases the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, the immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who are exposed to very high doses have a triple lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. Yeah.
Powerful.
Oh,
20 years. 20 years. So.
Powerful. I have to step in here because this is a conversation, and I'm just going to peel it back a bit, because what we're talking about, right, is the mind-body connection.
yeah.
And how, for a lot of people, what I'm discovering is for a lot of folks, and no fault of our own, because we live in a society that we're busy, right? And just keeps us trying to survive and trying to make sense of stuff, And the thing that I appreciate about what both of you all said was you honed into the reality of whatever's going on in the mind will show up in the body, And I just think that I would love to see more conversations for us as just a human species on the power and the reality of the mind-body connection, and how the ACEs study, I love I love quotes, and there's a quote that says, if you want to understand the end of a thing, look at the beginning. If you want to understand why a thing is in the state it's in now, look at what's going on and what happened in the beginning. And I think that a lot of the times, right, and just because we're human, you know what I mean? It's not like we're going through public school or whatever, and they're teaching us the power of what happens to us when we're little people. And I'm also grateful that the mental health field has evolved, and there's still some folks who don't believe the past has any relevance. on who we are today. But as Dr. Francine Shapiro shared with us, the past is present. And if I could say this for the people who are listening and they may not have all the science terminology and understanding, folks, think about it like this, that in other words, as we're growing up, think about your life and growing up as a child as if you're building a house, right? That if you build a house and if the foundation, which is our childhood, is shaky, it could be shaky because maybe we witnessed our parents going through divorce. Maybe we had a single parent mom or dad who worked all the time and maybe had other siblings and you had to grow up and become the surrogate parent in the household. Or maybe it's because we went through a hurricane, Katrina, or whatever the case may be, right? Sometimes those life experiences causes the foundation to get
Yeah.
shaky. Okay. I gotta also say this because I want to speak for those who may not have gone through a big major life event and they don't realize
Right.
being little people and you need to be seen, heard, you need hugs, and you didn't get that. Those are also things that can make the foundation shaky. Okay. And then when you try to build your house on this shaky ground, for a minute, if you stand back, it look good, don't it? It looked good until life, until storms, until the winds, until you start trying to add people, and then you start noticing all the creaks and the leaks, and the foundation is just shaky, and it's hard to build something solid that is resilient and standable on it, right? And so I just wanted to say that and say that the conversation we having today about that mind body connection and what's showing up in the body, as Rachel mentioned, right? And those physical health symptoms, how they all can be connected by things that we're carrying from things we witnessed in the mind. And I digress,
Talk
right?
about this here for just a second. I want to honor you, Rachel, for your research and foundation and giving us the really good framework for this study. I think that's imperative to this conversation. So I wanted to say thank you for bringing to light those issues and those categories. I think it's very, very powerful. I think a lot of times people don't understand how the impact of those categories, such as we mentioned, divorce, can really impact those health outcomes. Now, this is what's been on my mind. I'm watching this Netflix documentary. It's called Athlete A. It's been out for a long time, and it's about the United States Gymnastics Association and how they have socialized gymnasts into this culture of sexual abuse
Oh,
perpetuated by the doctor Larry Nasser. And so he was eventually convicted. But what this documentary showed was the progression of in the beginning, we had these adult females that were engaged in the sport, and then we eventually transitioned into pubescent and prepubescent girls and celebrated their success over time. So these women were getting younger and younger. And so one of the athletes on there had said, why are you coming out now? And the interviewer asked her, and she said, well, because that 14-year-old girl couldn't come out, but I can now as this adult female. And I think that working with those fragile minds, those fragile brains that are going through this experience where they had molestation, they had continued abuse, these physical symptoms, and then the pressure of performing in the Olympics, even with pain. I just got to the part where it's with Carrie Strug, and you can see she's limping before the vault, and then she has this vault, that even I remembered. And she landed it, but just on her foot, it ruined her foot. And to celebrate this idea, this actual physical pain, because she got the Olympic gold. And so I had to reflect on my own interpretation of she got the gold, she worked so hard. And this coach, Bella Caroli, in the documentary, it talks about the ranch, and he was from Romania, and some of these practices where he would indoctrinate him and his wife these girls into physical abuse, slap them, tell them, these emotional abuse comments. And then these physical realms where one of them talk about what she was sick and she lost 6 pounds, you need to maintain that. And so this culture really in the USA gymnastics realm came out where they're perpetuating the abuse. They had reports of this man, this doctor, Larry Nasser, touching them, and they would report that. and they would say, oh, this is normal. Even with the parents in the room, he, continued grooming these gymnasts and these athletes. And one of their comments was he was so nice, right? So he was such a contrast to this lifestyle that they had been exposed to, that he was nice, he cared, and then he was doing, in my opinion, more egregious things than the people that were engaging in physical abuse and mental abuse. So you have these girls, these fragile girls, right, on there, physically, emotionally, and sexually abused, getting the gold. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on in their brains? And now as they're adult gymnasts, they're looking back, and so really shifting that culture, to where they're feeling protected and safe. But their bodies, right? It's all focused on their bodies, the performance of their bodies. And it's just been really profound for me to realize, as we're talking today about the impact of the ACEs score, how that impacts their body, and how over time, we still have celebrated that, even unknowingly for myself, as I take personal responsibility for that. It's just been impactful, right? And so I think even becoming more aware of those environments is, how do we become responsible for that?
Definitely. Also want to add on that the people who were saying, oh, that's okay and that's normal, that's also reinforcing the abuse and trauma. So that can be, another type of trauma, that invalidation, it just takes away people's power. It's really profound how much it affects, our bodies.
What I love about ego state work is that we can repair those, though. So this is the problem. I like to get into the solution, right? So what we can do as therapists is work in ego states as your right now self. So let's go back to the, gymnast example. This 28-year-old self, I'm just guessing at her age, can go back to that 14-year-old gymnast, and we can repair that through EMDR. We can rewrite the neurological pathways. Tamira has a great story, great comments on rewriting the story in our neurological system. And I think really we can go back and comfort that kid that didn't get what it needed in our right now selves and create a whole adult. And I think that what I would say to, those children is it's going to be okay. Those traumas that you're experiencing, you might not process until you're a lot older. Find a trusted adult just to be with you, and just know sometimes those aren't going to be processed until later on. I did want to acknowledge that August is Teen Mental Health Awareness Month as they're going back to school. So acknowledging that and being able to help kids and teens going back to school in that environment. They have a lot of different social impacts, right? In this, media realm, the technology realm, and the social realm, and this loneliness part. So I think a lot of these mitigating factors can, present with this different semblance. But I just wanted to say there is hope. If you're an adult that has a high ACEs score, as an adverse childhood experience, you can heal with, I use EMDR. It's not the only modality. It's the one I believe in and have tried, tested, and true to myself and my practice. But I just want to say that is possible, that you can go back and repair those wounds.
Ooh, I got a juicy question for you, Rachel. Just because I think, and what I'm learning too is just the power of just the somatic work, right? And so I want to ask you that when you're facilitating, when you're doing EMDR therapy, right? What do you do to kind of integrate the somatic work? And then if you can give like a brief definition, one that's like, so the everyday person who's not a therapist who may see this will understand what the somatic part means, and then just kind of describe how you facilitate it with your clients when you're guiding, with that integration.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So with somatic work, the aim of it is to neutralize some of the cortisol levels in our nervous system, how we respond to things, and that healing is possible. Like Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, her whole, as a Surgeon General, was trying to inform all these medical care providers that this is related to trauma, and there's still so many medical doctors that are unaware of it, unfortunately. However, she says ACEs are not destiny. Okay? So the going, using EMDR can definitely be helpful to rewire that nervous system. And then having ways to address the specific effects of trauma. We now know that the physical changes happen in the body. So during the traumatic events, we can go back and sit with those parts, sit with them, and have a different perspective, have a less objective perspective that is maybe not as traumatized and not having the same physical responses. So one thing that you can use to do somatic therapy and incorporate that in trauma treatment, it just really focuses in on the mind and body connection. And it complements trauma treatment really well. It develops an understanding of how trauma is stored in the physical sensation, tension, discomfort, or chronic pain. And so now we've recognized that the impact mental health has on our physical mental health and our future mental health. And so we aim to work with the body to change those responses, awareness, and attunement to promote healing. There's techniques like mindfulness, breath work, yoga can be great to help relieve tension, just really slow down that process to be able to, in a palatable way, in little bite-sized chunks, regulate those emotions. And it helps people reconnect with their bodies in a safe and supportive manner. And it can also complement somatic work can also complement other theories like EMDR, CBT, or psychodynamic therapy. And it allows to access those memories by making it in bite-sized chunks. And it just leads to a more comprehensive, deeper, and oftentimes more holistic healing process.
Oh, Rachel, I love that. I've been sharing that one of the things that I so appreciate about EMDR therapy, and that's not to say I could not have discovered it in any other modality. However, EMDR has really helped to anchor for me, again, the power of the mind and the body, and how oftentimes, again, because we just don't know what we don't know, and we don't often recognize, and then we live in a culture that just is so judgmental, so dismissing oftentimes of the body and the shape of it, the size of it, what's missing, and whatever the case, whatever the story may be. But when we start doing this beautiful healing work, oh my God, where we're able to, in bless neuroplasticity,
Yes.
that what we've been through, though we've been through it, we don't have to continue to go through it in the mind, in the body. If we just can call for the courage, right, to lean into, to learn how to listen, how to get connected to the body. And I loved how you talked about yoga, because for me, as a woman of color who has done some of her own healing work and is becoming a more healed human, because of EMDR, because of yoga and amazing mental health therapist, right? Can you talk a little bit about, because in my book, there's so many people, brown folks really too, who just don't know, or they've been taught so many negative things about yoga that prevents them from stepping into it, not recognizing how this incredible, and then you could do it from your own. You could do it on your own, and you could do it from your own home to help your body to heal. Can you share just a little bit about what you know, and how maybe you support your clients in practicing yoga and things like that, and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think of the whole body of somatic work is actually kind of like learning to swim. Okay. there's been times where we just throw people into the deep end. You're going to sink or swim. And that can be like talk therapy for a lot of people, especially if culturally that's not okay in your family, or, you know, don't show weakness. And those kind of messages are given to a lot of people, especially people of color. So with somatic work, it helps. It doesn't have to necessarily only be in the client's in the therapy session. And you can first develop a way to reinforce, you know, maybe you got a shaky foundation, but guess what? We're gonna go, you know, sturdy it up and make it more secure. Right? And you can do that by like running your hand through the water, right? Making sure, letting your nervous system know it's okay to get into that pool. Then moving up to maybe sitting your feet hanging over the edge of the water, right? When that's okay, your nervous system realizes like, okay, I'm okay. Then it, you know, put on those little boards that can help you stay afloat, or the little floaties for your little ones, you know, wading in slowly. And then eventually when you're in the water, you have the capacity to like start learning to swim. Right? And it actually becomes like second nature. So that can be done through things like yoga. There's a lot of grounding exercises, and those are meant to help you firmly plant yourself in the present moment. That can look like petting your dog, counting backwards in increments of 7 from like the number 100, holding an ice cube, stepping outside barefoot. And most of these things are not during the therapy session, right? There's also body scans. A lot of times I have clients come to me and they've never done like a meditation or a progressive muscle relaxation. So we practice these in session. I, you know, print out a script for them. They go home and they're like, oh my gosh, my sleep is so much better, you know. Just different ways to help the clients become more attuned with their body sensations and release that tension. And the body work, that's things like yoga, stretching. We do a lot of stretching in session. Receiving acupuncture treatments, that's been very helpful for a lot of people, especially people who may have some of these medical challenges from a higher ACEs scores and have not really been acknowledged from the medical care providers that focus solely on the physical body. And then there's things like reaching towards a caregiver. So in the moment, maybe like the Gestalt method and you're having an empty chair, but maybe you didn't have the reach, or maybe you didn't have someone receive you when you were a child. So mimicking these things, yes, they can be done in the therapy session, also without, and that's important too. There's breath work. And that can be like belly breathing and making sure your abdomen is rising while you're breathing. Finger breathing, the kids love this one. It's kind of like in and exhale. And so you're crossing the meridian of the body also. Ujjayi, which is a victory breath in yoga, that can help regulate the nervous system, lower blood pressure, reduce anxiety. And these things generally just decrease the hypervigilant response that we have. And then lastly, my favorite is mapping your nervous system. This was something that was like very foreign to me, that I was like, oh no, I'm pretty calm, cool, and collected. Maybe on the outside, but on the inside, my nervous system was doing this like a lot throughout the day. So doing that and being mindful of what kind of things are going to cause triggers, even if outside it looks okay, you're not loud, but inside it's really loud. So that could be like running late, that could be your teenager talking back to you. What kind of things in your daily life is going to make some movement. And when you get practice with noticing where your body responds to situations on that scaling, then it allows for the awareness, and you can have flexibility with how you respond to that. So just changes all over the body.
You know, I just love this. And the reason that I love this is because my heart for all of us as human beings, every single community, um, as Kathy so brilliantly said at the start of this, if you got a brain, then mental health is for you. I love this conversation and the fact that we're airing it live because I want to see more people of color hear these conversations to recognize, right, that you are a living human being and your mind and your body has incredible systems that need attention, that need support. And there are really things, healing is possible, change, transformation. And I loved how you normalized. It felt so good to watch you doing the breathing in and breathing. I was like, ooh, I like the way that feels. But to normalize, can we just normalize the fact that we may look all well and pretty and together, but inside, sometimes there's lots of ways, sometimes it's lots of noise, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong with you. You are human. You know, but what we have to learn how to do is navigate. We need switches, if you will, to turn the volume up, turn the volume down, kind of quiet the noise and all the things. And all these beautiful techniques or powerful strategies that we can use if we're open and willing to, as you say, kind of step into the water, okay, to discover and practice some new things to help ourselves. So I just appreciate you, what sounds to me and looks and feels to me, and just normalizing what we're really going through internally in our mind and in our bodies. And you know, however, it could be uncomfortable for some, but just recognizing that, you know, you're not alone, right? You're not alone, and there's things you can do to support and empower yourself, and healing is possible.
Healing is definitely possible. And I also want to say, like, we're sticking with that learning to, learn how to swim. I don't know if any of y'all been like paddleboarding before, but it can be pretty anxiety provoking. But it's also empowering to, hey, maybe I'm not that trauma I know is not stored inside my body, new things coming up. So these skills don't even just like, okay, we're gonna sturdy up the walls and put, more reinforcements in them. It helps with the future too. Like, when you're 20, usually you feel like you're kind of on top of the world and things are going well. And then you realize that there's differences between you and others. And looking at, how people portray themselves can make a big difference in how we put what others see, our mask on, especially if you had a lot of trauma when you were younger that you couldn't have a lot of feelings or you couldn't put your needs out there. So by learning these skills, not only is it helpful for, the now, you're going to be able to, okay, I'm going to go paddleboarding. Then you're going to sit on the shore with the paddleboard. You're going to, test the water. You'll lay on your stomach and paddle before you start, getting on your knees to paddle. You're going to secure your leash, put on a life vest, and then before you able to stand. But it gives you that confidence to know that I've managed these things that have, maybe been rough, and I can do even more. And those things that may have ruffled your feathers are like second nature now.
What I love about this conversation and that metaphor with the swimming pool, my kids just are in swimming lessons this week, so it's on the top of my mind. But really, it's what you're talking about is phase 2 in EMDR, this resourcing, making sure that our body can tolerate what's going on and that we're in charge with the skills that you just mentioned, yoga, making sure all of those skills are on board. When I went to, EMDR training in phase 2, I thought it was just safe place and, light stream and container. I thought those are the resources you use. And then as I'm getting, certified and becoming a consultant, I'm realizing, oh, it can be all the things. Whatever's going to take that subjective unit of distress score from a 10 down, any of those interventions can be used. And it's so empowering for patients to realize you already have what's on board. I'm not going to tell you to do yoga. I'm going to reinforce the fact that you do it. I'm not going to tell you to go to your garden and cut the flowers. I'm going to reinforce the fact that you do it. And as I'm listening in the sessions, I'm writing those down. And when we get to the part where they're stuck and I say, oh, can you imagine yourself in your garden tending your flowers? They're like, yes, you know, and that reduction in the system and that stabilization and the fact that I heard them is so magical. And so these really can be integrated into a really beautiful way with therapy as we continue to use these things over time. That's all.
You know, I think that when it comes to, you know, the work that we do as therapists and looking at how in this, you know, conversation with Rachel today, and all of the incredible ways, the playfulness, we just saw a brief demonstration of that and how we can serve kids, how we can serve people from all different walks of life and who have gone through so many different things. But the greatest thing that I love about the conversation today is honing in and recognizing that as human beings, we all have faced our share of storms. You
Yeah.
know, some of those storms started very early in life. And even though we've all faced those storms and we've gotten here and we've managed to get ourselves here, and most times you find, right, with the clients we serve, many of them, though they've been through a lot of hard things, they are so strong and resilient, and they've been trying to heal, they've been trying to recover, but they still just notice, okay, I'm still not feeling that sense of wholeness. It's still hard for me to receive love. It's still hard for me to reach for my dreams. And there is a pathway to healing that makes healing very much so possible. And the thing that I love about braiding EMDR with somatic work is how it can deepen that healing process and do this, restoring not just, you know,
Yeah.
the client's mind, but restoring their relationship with their body and learning how to get more anchored in trusting themselves. Do you all witness that, right? Isn't it
How many
divine?
times I've said something, where do you feel that in their body? And they're like, what?
Yes.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so as you go through this experience, what, you know, where are you noticing that? They're like, oh, I don't know. I have a patient whose whole left side, you know, he had no idea that his trauma was on the left. I mean, he had an idea, of course, but it's always stored right there. And it's like, oh, that's what, you know, and as we're processing, it comes up and it's like, oh, okay. You know, the issues are in the tissues, people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think it's like maybe helpful to review some of the shifts that clients can expect when
Mhm.
they're doing somatic work and trying to move through trauma with also integrating EMDR. So that decreased emotional distress is probably going to be the most profound change and the reason people are going to therapy. Learning how to regulate, learning that sending an email to your boss shouldn't, you know, induce a panic attack. Okay? And being able to conquer those kinds of things can lead to some really dramatic changes. The second, there's enhancing emotional regulation skills. So just being able to be more sure and confident in your emotions, how to manage them, how to do tough things. Next is increasing somatic awareness. And so that's just like diving deeper than just talk therapy can provide. It helps identify those body sensations, learning to regulate the nervous system, and it just leads to a better sense of control, which is really important if you've had a lot of trauma, and body attunement. Okay. So paired with greater body attunement, people can actually improve their physical health. We're talking about like the ACEs are not a destiny, okay? Is being able to notice, I keep getting a stomach ache every single time I'm having an argument, or, you know, irritable bowel syndrome, very tied to emotional distress, migraines, those kinds of things. You'll be able to identify, work through, and then have the confidence And I'll tell you guys, like, especially with chronic health, you go to the doctors and they're like, no, it's just a mental health issue, or lose weight, or get better sleep. And yes, these things can help with that, but also being able to be more assertive about, like, this is what's going on in my body. I need a second opinion. Those things just lead to better physical health and a greater understanding of self. So as clients engage in the trauma work, they develop that mind-body connection, and they have increased self-trust. So we were talking about not trusting themselves, right? Being able to say, no, this is actually what's going on. I am feeling this uncomfortable feeling. I am feeling this painful feeling. And they're more likely to seek medical care. And so lastly is the increased resilience and empowerment. And that's just ultimately having the self-compassion, the resilience, as you were talking about, confidence, and being able to increase their self-worth by being able to do tough stuff. I don't know how many times I've heard folks with parents just invalidating their feelings time and time again. That is a trauma, right? That is emotional abuse, that especially if it's constant. So being able to move past that not only leads to a healthier now, but a healthier future and healthier body.
Oh, Rachel, I surely appreciate you sharing on that, because I meet a lot of women who, when they first come into the session, we're doing the intake and we're talking a little bit about their history, and like, oh, my childhood was great. Right? Oh, my childhood was great. I had both of my parents, and it's like, okay, and then we start, looking and exploring their relationships with their mother, their individual, not just what you saw your mom and dad do in providing, but what did the connection, how was that? And they were like, well, we really didn't have one. And then all of a sudden, there's this deep sadness that they become aware of. And then, when we lean into the sadness and all the things, and then they start recognizing, man, my struggles with feeling alone, and they really started here, and how not growing up, being seen. I say this for the parents, for the big people, to hold space for the little people. Our children, and children are more susceptible, right? Because they don't get to choose where they grow up. They don't get to choose. They don't get a say in how their parents speak to them, treat them. And we've got to become more aware that words hurt, and they will stick. It's not true. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will definitely hurt us. And how we need to recognize when our children, their feelings are very valid and need to be validated. And when we, whether it's intentional or unintentional, right? We live in a time where we can learn. I tell folks all the time, I say, listen, you may not have known what to do then, but be proactive, because get them Dr. Google fingers and them TikTok fingers working. There's so much information for us to be more proactive in feeding ourselves information to better ourselves, right? But to recognize dismissing, invalidating, minimizing, shushing children can lead to deep hurt and unresolved trauma that will carry with them into their adult years. And it's our responsibility, I believe, to curb that as much as we can in our time. So I thank you just for speaking on that and sharing on that. And I'm going to toss the mic over to Kathy, and then we're going to give it back to Rachel to see if she has any words of encouragement.
Yeah, I just agree with everything that's been said. I don't have any really thing else to add. I just want to acknowledge the power in this room, the power in this podcast as we're advancing the healing across the nation. Really embodying ourselves together as a team, coming together in this time is very important and critical, and that we can really affect people with these conversations. So just expressing gratitude to all that's been shared here to advance the healing that we all are committed to. So go ahead, Rachel. I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and just any last closing comments or words for therapists.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to find out more information, as Tamara was saying. Right? What information are you receiving? There's many places you can go to get information about how parenting affects children. A great place to learn more about that is like the burkefoundation.org or acesaware.org. Right? So that does definitely have a plethora of information to help seeing how that trauma impacts health and what you can do to make those changes. Maybe you didn't know that saying that to your child was hurtful or painful. You'd be surprised at how much like a sorry can do. Okay. Also, if you haven't read the next, the best-selling book, the New York Times best-selling book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. That book is really palatable. You don't have to be a therapist to read that, and it really informs how trauma is impacting our bodies and how that can develop unhealthy patterns. Therapists, I think EMDR is definitely helpful to even the basics training can be able to allow you to work with clients in a safe manner. And I personally recommend the Professional Transformation Institute. They actually teach the somatic and attachment focused EMDR, which integrates that somatic and the EMDR, and they balance it like really well. Look into somatic experiencing training, and that's from Dr. Peter Levine. People with chronic illnesses, particularly those with high ACEs scores, have found help, have found relief, and there's tons of books that are so great. Polyvagal theory, and that's just kind of being aware of what happens to our nervous system. Is it when it goes up into the red, and like how to bring it back down to the green. Sensory motor therapy, that's Pat Ogden. She pioneered this, and this is really, really important to learn a lot of sensory techniques and things to help integrate healing into your bodies. There's also bioenergetic analysis, Hakomi method, Gestalt, and mind-body centering that can be helpful. So that, including mindfulness, can really help inform therapists on how to help people. And a lot of that is pretty palatable for people who may not be mental health professionals. So I also do want to say, make sure you're receiving those CEUs in trauma work. It's important to stay up to date on this information as it's constantly evolving. The whole ACEs, we learned about that in the 90s. That wasn't that long ago. And you know, just even the evidence and the brain scans and MRIs and things, that's from like 10, 15 years ago. And a lot of people still don't know about it. So keep up to date by doing that so you can offer, you know, the safest care to your clients. And I think, you know, just ending with the ACEs are not set in stone. Healing is possible.
I love it. And then Rachel, can you tell the listening audience if they want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
My website is allpeoplecounseling.com. You can email, call, text. There's also a contact form on the website that you can reach out to me through.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, we thank you. Kathy, take us out of here.
Well, just honoring all that's been said and shared and released in this space and time today, honoring all the people that are listening and the people yet to be healed. We just really appreciate you at Rewire 360. Our goal is to bring the clinicians to the mind-body experience and to help them build a business about that. So we appreciate you. We're so grateful to have you, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye, Rachel. Bye, Tamara.
Bye, Kathy on the couch.